Why Jira hurts your game studio and the 4 failure patterns you must break. Should you just delete Jira? Maybe, but you likely need a different fix. You lead a busy team that works hard. Despite endless tickets and dashboards, the game isn't better. Your best people avoid Jira entirely, and part of you understands why. Today, you'll learn why Jira is failing you and how to make it work for your team. I've used and avoided Jira while helping AAA teams ship on schedule. You'll get the 4 failure patterns, the warning signs, and the steps to correct them today. Make Jira help you. Don't become its slave. I was recently talking to a very experienced, very senior person in game development, and I asked them, how would you make all of game development better? And they said they delete every Jira instance across game dev. And it made me laugh, but there was something real there. It wasn't all just a joke. I have a story of a time I was working with an organization. It was a few years ago, and one of the most senior, if not the most senior producer at that organization was talking about how he kept track of how the team was doing and where things were at. He said he spent a lot of time in Jira watching tickets moving. He could understand who was doing well and who wasn't, and which projects were on track and which weren't, just by looking at Jira. And I was just sitting there going like, this is so sad. Because it's not true. And there's a lot of organizations that struggle with this. It's not that you can't have a tool like Jira, but how we use it is so often broken. And in this case, as people become aware that you're watching them via Jira, teams end up feeling untrusted. They end up feeling like they're watched all the time. They're not supported. They end up feeling like they have to make sure the Jira looks good, and they start contorting their behavior around having more tickets or fewer tickets or whatever it is that they think is going to help. And it impacts how they report velocity. It impacts all these different things because you thought that Jira somehow gave you perfect visibility into your organization's function. There was another line from that same conversation with that senior leader who suggested deleting every Jira instance. And it was, players don't care how many tickets you closed. And I think that's true. So I want to dive into this because the reality is Jira and all the tools like it aren't evil, but the way we use them often creates huge problems. Here's my theory. Process, and Jira is included in this as well as many of the tools like it, is there to serve us. But too often it becomes the boss. When it becomes the boss, we have failed. We have screwed up as leaders, and we are now leading our organizations poorly, and we are more likely to fail. So I'm going to talk about 4 different problems that emerge that I see related to Jira. And there's a lot. There's a lot of things you can nitpick at about Jira. I have a list over here. You can talk about the complex UI or the rigidity of the system. You can talk about the bloat of plugins over time and the fact that it's not really well built for people to use it compared to even other tools out there. But rather than going there, I'm going to talk about this through the lens of what is the impact that Jira actually has on organizations when it ends up being misused, which unfortunately happens, I would say, far more often than it being used well. First, we're going to talk about centralization creep. Jira is a tool built by Atlassian. Atlassian figured out a long time ago that if I try to sell a tool that's really great for the developers, but not really great for the middle managers and senior leaders at an organization, no one will buy. Because developers don't have the right to purchase anything. Middle managers and senior leaders tend to, really the senior leaders. And so if I build a tool and I optimize for the person who's going to purchase that tool, I optimize it for the senior leaders of an organization. When you end up doing this over a long period of time, Jira slowly becomes a tool that has a lot of reports and dashboards and visibility features and all these things that make people in senior leadership positions feel like they know what's going on inside of their org, like in the story I told before, that I can look at Jira, I can see tickets moving, and that gives me this clear picture of how we're progressing and if the game is on track and all this different stuff. It doesn't actually do that. But as a result of us thinking that way, we also think now we can act through Jira or based on what we see in Jira to make decisions that impact the whole organization. And we start sucking information and decision-making up and up and up the org, instead of pushing it down where it should be, because we work in a place with a lot of uncertainty. Game development has a lot of just built-in uncertainty in it. And we want people at the lowest level making decisions about the problems that they see and how they'd address it, and then letting us know what they're doing as we go higher and higher up the organization. Jira reverses this. It starts sucking decision-making. It starts sucking information up. And it's the people at the top who feel like they know everything that end up feeling like they can make all the decisions and guide things. And often they'll jump in based on what they see in Jira, and they'll say, wait, you should be doing this or not that, or well, that doesn't look like it's as big, and they don't actually have context, they don't know, but Jira made them think they do. This comes into the second problem that I see. So first, you have this idea that Jira causes some amount of centralization through perceived visibility. But second thing, map versus territory. It's not real visibility. There's a problem that exists whenever you create a model of something. The model of whatever you're modeling is imperfect. There's a saying that the smallest thing that could perfectly model the universe is the universe. Models always have less detail than what they're trying to model. And that's okay. It doesn't mean they're not useful. But Jira is often viewed as this map of your organization, how it's going, how teams are doing, how individuals are doing. It's not a very accurate map, but people think it is. And again, first thing, centralization creep. The second thing, map versus territory. You're looking at Jira tickets and you're looking at burn down charts and you're looking at ticket completion rates versus total backlogs and all this different thing. And you think you know what's going on. And you actually have this very, very narrow, biased, imperfect slice of it, because even teams that are so good about updating Jira can only put into Jira what they know. And so much of game development is about figuring out what we don't know. And so you have this illusion of precision, and it causes people to make those bad calls because they think they see their organization, but actually they're just looking at an incomplete picture. And so you have a problem here, and it's this map versus territory problem. They look at the reports, they look at the dashboards, and they think, now I understand what's going on. When in fact, in order to understand what's going on, you have to go talk to a lot of people to get their context. Now, does that mean Jira is useless? No. Jira can still be helpful in identifying certain issues. They can help you see like, hey, looks like this isn't on track, but it doesn't give you all the information you need. And too often people think it does. So they don't use Jira as a way to have an important conversation with actual people about what's really going on inside of a team, or inside of a product or feature or whatever it is. They instead just go, oh, got it. Jira told me this and that must be right. So first thing, centralization creep, this idea that we pull decision-making in because now people feel like they can see the whole organization. Second thing, what they actually see is a very bad view, an incomplete view, a biased view often of the organization. Third thing that happens when you start doing this, you create perverse incentives. What that means is that when people, developers, game devs inside of your organization realize that you're using Jira in this way to track who's good, who's not good, which teams are on point or not, comparing teams against each other based on ticket movement, they will start responding to that. There's a quote I love to use. It's by Eliyahu Goldratt. Tell me how you'll measure me and I'll tell you how I'll behave. And the idea behind that is when you start measuring people based on Jira, they will start making Jira look good on their behalf. They'll go like, oh, you want more tickets completed? Okay, I can split my tickets into more tickets so that it seems like I'm moving more things. Or you need fewer tickets? I can make them fewer. You need bigger estimates? I can make bigger estimates. As people understand how they're being evaluated, they can easily mess with that system in a way that leads to the already not great map versus territory view becoming even more corrupted because they're now playing the game that you've started as leaders, that you've put into place culturally. And you can say, well, they shouldn't do that. Well, yeah, you shouldn't also try to look at Jira and pretend like that gives you a clear view of your organization. And so if you want a team of people that are focused on achieving outcomes for players, which is what we're all here to do in game development, but you make their entire existence predicated on how many tickets they complete, don't be surprised when you get fewer outcomes that matter to players and more complete tickets. Again, nobody ever said, how many tickets did you complete to make this game? Players don't care, but we end up caring because we've misunderstood. Also, other parts of this that I've seen become problematic. I want a team collaborating to get the most important work done. Always, all the time. And so when I have a team, I tend not to individually assign everybody little bits of work inside of whatever my work management system is, Jira or whatever else. I want them thinking about how do I add the most value to whatever it is, whatever the goal is of our team, whatever the goal is of the game. How do I know what that priority is and how do I help move it? And if that means I've got 4 people working on one thing because that helps that thing move just a little bit faster than 3 people would, I take that trade-off versus having those 4 people doing 4 separate things because I don't want to just be moving tickets. I want to be nailing the most important things, hitting the highest priority work that can be done. Imagine though, if I'm tracking everybody and evaluating everybody based on ticket completion, especially at the individual level, now, if I see someone who's working on the most important thing my team can do struggling, but I know that I'm going to look bad if I don't get my 2 tickets for this sprint done, I don't go help them until I get my 2 tickets done. Because I know I have to get my tickets done or someone's going to have a conversation with me about my tickets aren't done. And the answer that I should be able to give is, oh yeah, I didn't do my tickets because that thing is way more important. And I know that because our team is constantly talking about the priorities and the outcomes we're trying to achieve, not how many tickets we're moving. So I went and I helped the person working on the most important thing. You want teams to feel very free to do that. You want them to be able to move towards the most important work and figure out how to collaborate and understand what each other are doing and do that all on their own. And when you start measuring people according to ticket movement, this is exactly what doesn't happen. Even when you start measuring teams based on this, because imagine I've got one really important ticket, but there's another 10 tickets that my team has to complete. And, maybe they've got velocities or story points or whatever attached to them. I don't even care. Let's say you're just tracking with a throughput metric, right? So you're just, how many things did we get done? Well, if several people go and help that number one priority thing that became harder than we thought a couple days into the sprint iteration cycle, whatever you're doing, then we don't get as many things done. And then our stakeholders show up and they start going, why didn't you get all the things done that you planned? Your throughput has been 10 for the last 5 sprints or more. We were really excited about that, but this time you only got 5. And it's like, well, yeah, we had to go help the number one thing. And again, they're pushing against what adds the most value to the product, what adds the most value for the player, for the engaging experience we're trying to create. But they don't think about it that way because they think reality lives in Jira. So, you've got to be careful with this. You've got to be careful about the perverse incentives you create. One of the ways you can handle this, by the way, if you have a team, and let's say you're using some sort of story point metric, one of the great insanities that is not necessarily Jira specific, but certainly can happen in Jira, is you compare teams based on their velocity, even though they have completely separate relative scales of understanding how they're moving. You go ahead and start doing that. Like, oh, well, this team, they have 10 people on their team and they got 60 points done last sprint, and you have 12 people on your team and you got 30 points. And it's like no understanding of how there's a difference between those two relative estimation scales, no understanding of how story points actually function, or even throughput or things like this, like that there could be different ticket sizes, all this different stuff. Just blank on that. But the way I was like, okay, cool. If I'm on the team that's slower because we're only doing 30, right? It's absurd. I just say like, well, let me just multiply all my estimates by 10. There, now I'm going 300 and they're only going 60. So I'm 5 times faster than them because I changed my estimate because it's a relative scale. And sometimes this can be something that can help people realize, oh, this is silly. It's actually hard. You have to do a lot of work before you can compare different teams, and you still shouldn't around how their velocities go. Okay, that's the perverse incentive. So we started off, there's this centralization creep that happens. One of the reasons that's such a problem is there's a difference between the map and the territory because they're making bad decisions based on an incomplete picture and it's all centralized, which means that everybody else is not making decisions. Perverse incentives start popping up and individuals and teams start reacting in ways to what they're receiving from above that causes all kinds of issues. They start corrupting the system further, and we all are just playing these weird games with each other instead of actually making games for players. So last one, process inversion. This comes back to the original thesis. We should be served by our tools. We should be served by Jira. It should be the thing that helps us do our jobs better. It should help us reach our product vision. It should help us maintain our culture. It should help us take care of the org and ultimately serve players. Instead, what so often happens is that as Jira starts with centralization, is not a good picture of the organization and creates perverse incentives, it becomes the thing we all serve. The process becomes the master, and the process is the last thing that should be the master. Now, I get there are environments where the process is very important and it helps create guidelines and constraints around things. I'm not saying that's wrong, but what I am saying is when you get into a situation where everybody, when they think about what should I do, their first answer is like, I should go check in Jira, versus I should go have a conversation with somebody, and it might be like, maybe I'll go check in Jira and then I'll go have a conversation. That could be totally fine. But so often it's literally just, how do I move tickets in Jira? How do I just get things moving so that our team is not in trouble, so that I'm not in trouble? So if you're in that environment and you find yourself with your team going, well, how do we know what to do? Well, I've got to serve my reports that I create and send up. I've got to serve my burn down charts. I've got to serve my dashboards. I can't have any of those things looking bad, because if any of those things look bad, then I get in trouble. And if the broader organization is also like, how do we make sure that Jira has everything it needs? A simple way that I see this appearing is when we create a ticket inside of these systems, ideally that ticket is a placeholder for a conversation between somebody who made that ticket and who understands why it's valuable and somebody who's going to be building that ticket out and figuring out how to actually do it. Often we go the opposite way. And we're like, well, we should use the system to remove all the conversation because the conversation takes time and is annoying. The conversation is how you get aligned on where you're trying to go. It's one of the most important things that can happen. But if instead you do the opposite and you try to put all the detail you can into the ticket and everybody just tries to make the tickets longer and more precise and just like all the detail is there so you know exactly what to do. And now someone goes and tries to build it. So often, even with all the extra work, we don't build the right things. And then we come back and we're like, why didn't you build the right thing? I put all the detail in Jira. This happens over and over and over. And it would have been so much easier if we viewed that ticket for what it was, a placeholder for a conversation between two people to get aligned. And a manifestation of this as well in the process inversion sense. I don't go talk to someone directly. I talk through Jira tickets. Oh, sorry. Did you want to do that? Well, make sure you make that ticket in Jira and then I'll take a look at it. No, I want to talk to you about what's going on in the game. I don't want to make 5 tickets about it. What if we don't need them? What if it's not important? Why would I make 5 tickets just so you can see them? Is that how you now understand information? And the reality is for some people, yes, that is how they now understand information. They understand it through the lens of Jira only. It's sad, but it's true. And some people were like, hey, you're exaggerating some things. I'm not. I've seen stuff like this. Man, it is more common than you'd think for organizations to be contorting themselves around the processes, the tools like Jira and others. And they end up serving those things and trying to figure out how to feed the beast that is the process rather than having that process be something that serves them delivering great games to players. Does this sound familiar? You're in a leadership role at a game studio. Everyone is busy working. No one has any time. But the actual game itself isn't in a good spot. Maybe it's the tech. Maybe it's the lack of a validated prototype. Maybe it's that every person seems to have a different idea about what we're trying to build. But you've got a job. There are reports to send, meetings to schedule and facilitate, the occasional season of performance reviews to go through. And everyone is always so busy. When you step back, it makes you wonder if everyone is just going to keep slowly walking towards the abyss until the project or game fails. Is this what it means to be a leader in games? In tech? To endlessly repeat the same sequence of meetings without really moving the needle? To spend hours trying to get Jira tickets and dashboards where they should be? To pretend that everything is fine when you know deep down it really isn't? It doesn't have to be this way. You can make a difference. You can help your team and game succeed, but sometimes you need a bit of help to get there. I've started a game dev leadership accelerator. It aims to level up leaders who see opportunities to make a difference but don't know how to capitalize on them. We'll walk through what it means to lead well and give you tools to understand your organization's challenges and implement changes to overcome them. Game dev is hard. Knowing how to lead will give you an edge. It will still be hard, but you'll be ready to tackle it. If you're interested, let me know below. Hit the link. I hope to see you in the accelerator because I believe better leaders will help teams make better games, and I look forward to someday playing what you create. So just to recap, I've said them a bunch of times, but this is that last one is really like, this is my thesis. When process and the tools become the master rather than the servant, you have a serious problem. They are there to serve you, not to be served by you. Way we get there, start with centralization creep. Then we go into map versus territory problems if this isn't a very accurate picture. Then we go into the perverse incentives of people trying to figure out how to maximize looking good inside of a system that is more and more and more run by Jira. And that is the fourth thing, the process inversion. Process is now on top instead of being the thing that helps us succeed. So, want to leave you, though, not just with like, here's why Jira is a problem in so many organizations, but I want to talk about how it can actually work because Jira and other tools like, I'm a big fan of Favreau, but there's a lot of tools. Any of these tools could be made to work. Here's how you have to think about them, though. You want to focus on creating lightweight boards that teams can use. Simple things. You don't want to go into all the advanced stuff if you can help it. I get that, like, actually one of the things that Jira really excels at is like bug tracking. So if you want to do like more advanced bug tracking, that's fine. Create bug dashboards around that. I actually found that to be quite helpful. But for teams doing work, it should be more about conversation, and the board should be the support, the log, the thing that helps the team have the right conversations at the right time, not the thing that drives what the team does. So you want lightweight boards, simple columns, things moving through. Again, if you want to value stream map it out or do like a full Kanban flow and figure out every step in your process and build that out in whatever tool you're using, go ahead, be my guest. Just be aware that the purpose of that is to have the team talking to each other about what the most important next work is to do, and then to collaborate around that work, not to just move tickets through that board. If you get too locked into that, creates all kinds of anti-patterns. Next thing, do not do individual evaluation based on ticket metrics in any system, Jira or otherwise. Especially if you like, there are edge cases here, but I'm just going to say this as like a firm guideline. You do not want your people to feel evaluated based on how tickets are flowing through a system when you're doing game development. We are not in the sort of work where it's like, okay, I need to get one thing done every 5 minutes and then I hit submit and then I do the next thing in 5 minutes, then I hit submit and then I do that. We have to be in a place where we can go talk to other people, where we can collaborate, where we can figure stuff out. And that means that sometimes a ticket that we thought was simple is not, and sometimes a ticket that we thought was hard ended up being easier because we pulled in the right people early on and it turned out that we didn't have to do all the work we thought we might. We want people having those conversations. We want teams thinking about the work together. And so if I'm tracking, like when I track velocity for teams or throughput or whatever it is in any sort of ticketing system, when I track how, progress is going, I can do that in a way that provides predictability without ever going into the individual. And as soon as I go into the individual, I cause all sorts of anti-patterns because now people are aware that I'm tracking them at that level and that if they don't get their ticket done, it's bad. Like it looks bad for them. It might show up in their performance review, or someone who misunderstands the system will misinterpret it. In a more extreme version of this that I've done many times is no one's allowed to assign any work individually. I don't like the people assigning work individually, especially not in advance, but even when we're working on it, it's just like, nope, team's working on it. So we'll talk about it when we talk about what the team's working on, and the people that are talking about it, plural people that are talking about the most important thing or the next most important thing, they can give an update about it and they'll know. And we know who they are because we're a team and we're talking about the work we're doing together. By the way, I think this becomes more, not less important in a remote world. I think some people view these systems as some way to keep track of somebody in a remote environment. It's almost the opposite. What you do is, again, you contort behavior, you create the perverse incentives. So if you're a leader, refuse to evaluate individuals on teams by ticket metrics. Don't use that as a primary, even a secondary method of understanding if someone's being successful or not. I want them to feel free to go help add value where they can. And I get it, there's trade-offs there. Oh, well, maybe somebody's not doing that much work, or maybe this, you know what though? If you measure them by ticket movement, they're doing that anyway, and they're just gaming the system in their favor if they're a bad egg. Like, you don't actually catch the person who's not doing a good job. They'll get around you really easily. All right, where else can it work? Remember that the actual collaboration, I've talked about this, real conversations between people, that's how we align. These tools are placeholders for that. Jira is a placeholder that helps us have the right conversations at the right time if it's done properly. And so remember things that exist outside of the tool. If everybody feels like every time they do anything, they have to go to the tool, you have a problem. This is where I like having things like team Miro boards or game Miro boards, where we can just hop in and start collaborating together in digital spaces if you're remote. If you're in person, being able to grab each other from each other's desks and go into like a small room and draw some stuff on a whiteboard or whatever, this is really valuable to be able to do. You don't want to always be going like, hang on, we need to communicate via Jira and all this different stuff. Remember that real collaboration is about people talking to each other. We don't want a tool in the middle. They want to use the tool, not have the tool be a barrier to them collaborating. And then this last thing, I mentioned it earlier, Jira can absolutely function as some sort of log, a place where like I had a really good tech lead and we were working in Jira inside of an engineering team. And he would constantly be going through those tickets and making little notes and like capturing, oh, this is something we learned. This is something. And it was just like, it was helpful to the team to be able to look at that and go, when someone would like take on that ticket, he would go, oh, okay, cool. And he would read through some, well, those are really helpful notes from the tech lead about how we should and should not engage with this ticket. It was good stuff there. It helped. And it led to the conversation. It led to that person having more context whenever they went to talk to the product owner or talk to the tech lead about what they'd be doing, or when the group came together to collaborate about whatever that ticket was. You want it surfacing the right conversations at the right time so that the team is able to collaborate well and ultimately move towards the outcome that we're trying to create. Why don't people use Jira this way? I'll be honest, it's because it's hard to maintain the discipline around it for leaders. The people who bought Jira bought it because they were sold visibility. They were sold great dashboards and clean reports and being able to see everything in their organization and how all the work was moving. And they bought that lie. And now they're like, well, this is what I bought. I want to get it. And so that's what they use it for. And they think that that gives them the ability to make all sorts of calls with the very, very limited context that Jira provides them. And also, I think that it's much easier when I'm going like, well, how's that team doing? Well, I could go talk to leaders on that team, but then I have to schedule a meeting. I have to find a good time, or I have to walk down to where they are if I might be in a different part of the organization. Let me just go look at Jira and like run some reports on them and look at their dashboards and like, okay, that gives me the impression that I know what's going on in that team. And again, it's not that the reports or the dashboards or anything is wrong. It's that when we use it in these ways, we cause all sorts of issues. So the fact that you can get the report faster, I think, makes it seem efficient. The problem is we're losing effectiveness in the interest of efficiency. I've saved time. I've lost context. And the other thing too, like I said, this stuff persists is because once you start playing this game, it's hard to stop. Everybody starts figuring out how to game the Jira system and figure out how to make themselves or their team look good or not. And you end up serving the machine. And once you're all serving the machine of Jira and your tool chain, now to have somebody come in and say like, hey, I want to work in a different way. I want to work in a way that's more outcome oriented, that's more about making a great game than just moving tickets in our backlogs to done as fast as we possibly can. When you have somebody who comes in and suggests that, it's almost like heresy. Like people are like, they don't even know what that looks like anymore because they've all just been so focused in on like getting Jira stuff done. I was once in an organization that mandated Jira, and I want to talk about a story where I kind of went a different direction to try to help Jira still serve the function that it needed to serve inside of the organization, but have my team basically not use it. So I was doing content creation. I had a content creation team, and Jira was required for anything we would check into our source control, which was Perverse at the time. This just made sure that anything that was checked in, we could like backtrack to, okay, here's a ticket. The ticket came from a team. We could kind of find out where that check-in came from besides just whoever had checked it in, and have an understanding, okay, this is what it was intending to do. This is what it was for. But content didn't function in a way where like Jira was a clean way to have us understanding our work flowing through that system. So what I did was I created basically a shell ticket. And one shell ticket in Jira, and then we would build all the content. And whenever we checked anything in, we would check it into that. And all of our actual work, in terms of how it was tracking and trending and all these different things, we did in physical space. I tried it on like a digital whiteboard for a bit, but we were all sitting right next to each other. So we just mostly put it up on a wall. And on the wall, we could see, okay, here's all the stuff we need to do, and here's how it's progressing, and here's the steps in our pipeline. And the team then could always look at that wall and see what was going on, where in Jira, it would have been much harder to build that. Is it possible to have built it in Jira? Yes, but it wasn't nearly as flexible. It wouldn't have driven the conversations that we had. And we actually grouped around that wall relatively often to look and see how things were progressing and see if we were on track for whatever the deadline was for that piece of content. And all the check-ins just went through Jira. So I basically used Jira as a shell and filtered out all of the Jira noise from the team. And so that was an example where I just put a wall between the team and Jira, and the team really appreciated it because, again, in their context, Jira wasn't that helpful of a tool. It wasn't providing them good visibility, and any leader that would have looked at Jira would have not understood what was going on well enough and would probably have misunderstood what was happening in the team. So you can do stuff like that if you're in a Jira space. All right, some things I want to give you because, hey, Jira's out there. You might be using it right now. You've probably used it. You've probably used things like it. What is the thing that you need to start doing? First, figure out how to change Jira or your tool from being the thing everybody serves to being the thing that serves you. Let me give you a couple things you can do right away. First, kill the individual ticket KPIs. Do not track individuals against how they move tickets. If you do, you're creating a ton of bad incentives inside of your organization. I guarantee that's being gamed. Be careful with that. You want team outcomes only, team burn downs, team velocity, whatever. Used appropriately, those things can actually be helpful. Second, if you can look at what you're doing in Jira through a reporting lens, through a dashboard lens or whatever, just see if you can find anything where you have this report or something that really either isn't telling a very good picture or that nobody looks at, and just delete it. Get rid of it. Just be like, you know what? We're going to stop looking at this because this isn't actually helping us. This is confusing us. It's confusing those around us. It's confusing our stakeholders. And then the last thing, don't let Jira be the decision maker. Emphasize to the team that the point of these tools is to help us have the right conversations to align around where we're trying to go. And it can be helpful in doing that. It can save us time, as in the tech lead, putting little notes about like, hey, how this might be done and things to watch out for inside of a ticket. But it doesn't replace the human-to-human conversation. Don't let Jira make your decisions for you. Hey, leaders and game devs, if you love what we do here at Building Better Games, imagine what we could create with your support. By joining our Patreon, you help us bring deeper insights, develop better training, and host more expert discussions to level up your leadership and game development skills. Plus, as a patron, you're going to get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to episodes, and a chance to ask your burning questions directly to us. Join now and help us build better games together. Last thing I'll leave you with here. Jira has become a tool set. It was originally bug tracking, then it became a workflow management system or a work management system. And over time, it evolved to be something that is very good at looking like it serves middle management and senior leadership inside of organizations of all sizes, but especially medium and large scale organizations. The people who are often left behind in this, the people that we should be focusing on helping because they are the ones who do the work, are the developers on the front line. And so, a question to ask, and you might be surprised at some of the answers you get. Ask your developers, ask your team members, how is Jira hindering you in whatever you're doing? See what they say. You can ask other questions around this. How much time do you spend updating Jira? If you get answers like, actually, Jira is really great, helps us stay aligned. We know what our priorities are. Don't spend too much time in it, really. It's pretty well handled by the leadership involved. Then great. If you get answers like, I spend a lot of time thinking about Jira, I spend a lot of time making sure I get my tickets done, I spend a lot of time updating things and filling out our tracking nonsense and doing a lot of things that are not actually my job and aren't actually helping us ship a great game, but are supposedly creating visibility for other people inside of the organization, then you might have a problem. Now, they won't think about it through that lens of, oh, this is supposed to be creating visibility inside the. They're just like, this is just a burden that I have to deal with. And by the way, devs often just say, this is part of being a game dev. This is part of being a software dev. There's a tax I have to pay. But if you start asking them some questions about how that tool should be serving them and they are instead serving it, you might get some really great answers. And you want to think about that. You want to think about that honestly at almost every layer of the organization, because I've seen it where the way this has been solved is all the developers actually have no issues with Jira because they hardly have to interact with it, because Jira is this weird obfuscated layer that the team leaders and producers or whatever, they run all of it. They constantly update everything. They make all the tickets. They update. And now the whole intention of the tool is just that layer pretending that this is real data, because it's not even coming from the team. It's not even coming from the people doing the work. They're just trying to ladder stuff up so that they look okay inside of those systems as well. So I would start at the bottom of your organization and see, how is this helping you? How is this harming you? How much time does it take? Walk up the layers of your organization and see what you learn about the tool that you're using, Jira or otherwise, and whether it's actually giving you value, because it's costing you money. Is it actually giving you value, or is it just wasting a lot of everybody's time and giving you a really bad map of a really complex territory? We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening.